This is One Show, One Drink, part of the What We Watch When We Drink podcast from the Booze Dancing Entertainment Network and Bar and Grill. And we are here to talk about a very, very, very fun show that we all enjoyed, Deadwood, that was on HBO. And we're also going to talk about a whiskey from Israel, from M&H Milk and Honey Distillery, that was specially aged at the Dead Sea. So there you go. That's our plan.
Oh my God, we have a plan?
You know, to quote my good friend Al Swearingen, announcing your plans is a good way to hear God laugh.
All right. Well, you know what? With that in mind, let's roll the intro and then get this show on the road. Welcome to What We Watch When We Drink, a booze dancing media podcast featuring lively discussions about movies, TV shows, and anything else that we're watching while we drink our favorite boozy libations. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, you could always find us at boozedancing.com, and then please email us at boozedancing@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, show suggestions, drink suggestions, cocktail suggestions, whatever you got. We're here for you. How we doing, guys?
We are good. We are going to talk tonight about Season 1, Episode 12 of Deadwood that was aired back on HBO, and you can still watch it, of course, on HBO Max. You can stream all the episodes. And we all enjoyed that show when it came out originally, that whole series, 3 seasons. And tonight we just randomly picked an episode, and boom, that's the topic tonight. But first, we're going to talk about a little whiskey.
It's not a little whiskey.
No, it's not a little whiskey. This is the Milk and Honey Apex Series small batch single malt whiskey aged at the Dead Sea.
So we're pairing Deadwood with Dead Sea.
We are the epitome of death. Dead.
They have only like 2 little blurbs about this whole thing on the Milk and Honey Distillery website, which is mhdistillery.com. The Dead Sea Cask. This single malt is the first ever whiskey aged in the lowest place on earth, the Dead Sea, with temperatures climbing as high as 50 degrees Celsius. That's like, what, 120, 130 degrees? Yeah. Something like that. This whiskey is as strong and intense as the conditions under which it was matured.
So the guys at Milk and Honey, they have their standard series, and then there's this special series of kind of special projects that they're doing. And I think this is part of their like geography of Israel. They're going to age casks and different geographical locations in Israel that all have different climates. They're going to do something in the Golan Heights. They're going to do something in the desert. So this one, they took the barrels and they took them to the Dead Sea. And I believe, as I recall, they actually had them on the roof of a building. And so because it's so warm there in Israel, generally, you can't age it very long. So nothing's really going to be ever too old, kind of like the Indian whiskeys and Cavalon. And this is at the Dead Sea. It's at the lowest point in the world.
Have you poured some?
I have.
Okay, so have I. So again, a little cheers. Cheers to a new year.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. Cheers, gents.
Now, this is a 3-year-old.
It is 3 years old.
Which is really like hyper aged when you get to 3 years in the Israeli climate, right? So this is more like something you'd find for like a 7-8-year-old whiskey, probably, when you kind of measure it out.
Don't forget, 56.2% ABV.
There's only 4,900 bottles.
And I love the color.
It's not super dark, but it's got like, I don't know, almost like an orange kind of color to it. A little orange tint to it.
Yeah.
Do we know what kind of cask they used?
I believe it's just ex-bourbon. I don't think it's anything more than that.
We've had a number of these, and I was lucky enough to find their pomegranate cask, which Angela and I had some of.
Oh, that's good.
That's pretty good stuff.
That's very good.
You know, I find their whiskeys to be really well-rounded.
Mm-hmm.
And the age statement almost makes it seem silly that, you know, you wouldn't drink anything that wasn't 10 years or 12 years or whatever. And now you're drinking this and you're like, I don't know, whenever you think it's done, it's done. This is good.
Yep. I've got a little more information for you from the box that came in. They handpicked an array of casks from a variety of types and sizes and placed them on the roof of a hotel on the coast of the Dead Sea, exposed to the harsh and dynamic climate of the lowest place on earth, resulting in almost 40% angel share during that time.
Oh my God.
That's a lot of loss.
Wow. That's like 10 years.
How many bottles?
This batch, which is batch number 10, it says 4,892 bottles.
Okay, so wait, hold on a second. So you said 40% loss per year on the cask, right?
Right.
And a typical cask, like a bourbon barrel cask, gets you what, about 300 bottles?
Right.
Right.
So this is, then, right?
Yeah, but if you're losing 40% a year, how much is left in that barrel?
Not much.
Not much. So you're talking there's at least, what, 40 casks that are going into this batch?
Yeah.
Maybe,
probably more.
Right?
Yeah. To get this yield.
And probably more because some of those casks you might want to put in this. So they have to have a few of the off casks. So you might be looking like 50, 60 casks to get down to the 4,000 bottles.
That's a lot of whiskey. Must be a hell of a roof.
So first thoughts on this stuff?
At 56%, it's nowhere near as vapory or as menthol. It is as medicinal as you'd expect.
When I first poured it, it was pretty hot, but I think it kind of chilled out a little bit as it's opening up a little bit. And I haven't had any water yet.
There is, I think, a salinity to it.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit
on the nose or on the palate.
On the palate.
Palate.
Oh, I haven't tasted it yet.
I rushed in.
I'm going to ease myself in because it is, again, 56.2%. It's all up front. It is all up front. It is like all like from the first third of my tongue.
But the finish it's sweet rather than like pepper or spice, where it's a short finish, but it's a nice finish and a little bit drying.
It's kind of light and wispy, you know. It's like just like peppery and a little bit, you know. It's got a little spice to it right in the beginning. It's not super deep and it's not particularly sweet, but
the balance is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I think I heard that they were going to experiment with different kinds of casks as well down at the Dead Sea. So like a wine cask and different previous cask things, not just bourbon. And I'm sure this doesn't say it's not, so I'm assuming just a bourbon cask.
Yeah, there is a little bit of saltiness. I kind of get that.
Yeah. And is that us?
Yeah, real imagined.
Is it our head or is it?
I don't know.
If we didn't know Dead Sea.
That might be the only place in the world where I float.
you and me both.
Well, you're weighed down with all that metal.
I'm an anchor.
So, all right, I'm going to put this aside for a little bit. Let's start talking about the show, and then we can come back to it and discuss.
Deadwood. I know you guys were fans of the show. It had so many layers to it, and this episode really captured many layers of the show about all the dynamics of all the personalities and such an amazing cast of people.
Question for you. Were you all in from the beginning of the show, or did you go in, did you step in later, like after I got some buzz?
I don't remember. When did it come out?
2004.
I kind of think I was in the beginning, but I don't remember. I think I was because of Timothy Oliphant.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a Western. I was all in.
Yeah, I had a hard time with it at the beginning just because of the language and the way it was written. Because it's a pretty dense show and you really got to pay attention. And remember, we didn't have the subtitles on demand like we do now.
But my hearing was better then, though.
Yeah.
Wow.
and my children were younger, so they were asleep, and I didn't have to worry about the language like I do now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a little easier to watch.
The bigger part of the show for me was the language and the dialogue. It is poetic. It is deep. It's rich. It's colorful. It's old-timey. It's so many things that we're not used to hearing in traditional modern television. Going back to it for this episode was a step back to just this wonderful place where words matter.
And when they do intersplice curse words, they're not for shock value. They're just language. It's just a part of the show. It's a part of the person. And if that person doesn't say that word, they're not that character anymore. They're somebody else. It's wrapped up in them. It's amazing.
I saw a criticism of a current show. It was a period piece show. I don't remember what this was. And in the show, someone says something that's a more modern phrase that would have never happened in this period of time. And this was a criticism by this person writing this article. That is not the case in this show. I have the feeling, because none of us were there, this is how people spoke in some ways.
And it's wrapped up in the characters. That if the characters didn't speak this way, they wouldn't come off as the same type of character.
Right.
It's not the Queen's English. We're good with that.
No, but there's an interesting Victorian era speech pattern to it, right? And it's beautiful. It is just beautiful language. just beautiful. And everything, you hang on every sentence that comes out of every character's mouth.
And it seems like the writers take a good deal of time crafting the dialogue for each of the characters, that the interplay, and that's what the whole show relies upon. They're pulling each character aside into a separate room to have a short conversation, and then something else happens, and then something else happens. And the conversations between the two little characters are so well written. It's just amazing. Everything between Bullock and Swearingen, when Bullock goes in and he interrupts the Cy Tolliver character who's trying to put the strong arm onto General Crook, when he's sitting in there and he has his conversation. He starts it off not by bravado or coming in, but by saying, I have the utmost respect. My brother served. He died. I was a lawman. Everything becomes how to get to this guy and how to get to the next guy. When Bullock has the conversation with the Alma Garrett, her father, and he just pulls him off to the side and he's whispering in his ear, and the father's going like daring him to hit him. And then he just hits him. And you're like, okay, you dared me to hit you.
You dared the wrong guy is what I said.
I'm just going to hit you. And what was great about that is while he does it, he's so fired up. And as they pull away, you see the father spitting out his teeth, like to emphasize just how bad a beating it was. And like, wow,
and not just a tooth. What was it, like 14?
Oh,
Four teeth fell out of his mouth.
Many teeth.
Yeah, it was good. I had to watch it last night because the thing is, we're like 15, 16, 17 years removed from that episode. And I hadn't seen it in like 16, 17 years. So I don't remember all the stuff that was coming towards it, that built up to that moment. So I had to watch it again tonight, like a couple hours ago. And I watched it with the subtitles because there's just so much, like watching like Succession. There's so much nuance and there's so much going on in the language. It's not, I don't want to say not clear, but everything's like loaded.
What I also found interesting is these are actual real people. This isn't like make-believe names. But the general, his name is Crook.
Yeah.
And he goes into Deadwood, and he's the only legitimately honest person in Deadwood.
Yeah.
But your last name is Crook. Like, if you were writing this, you'd write that guy as a bad guy. But you're like, well, this is an actual real historic guy. And he goes into town. There's no women. There's no gambling. There's no drinking. Everything's on the up and up.
With a touch of white supremacy in
it.
Well,
that's, again, it's period.
That's a whole other thing.
When he rolls into town and talks about killing all the Indians on his way there.
Yes. This is not a PC sort of
it's not
so
conversation.
No.
It's factually correct, but it's not so good. And the character, Peter Coyote is playing him. He was so good, and he speaks so well that you're just like, wow, this was really great to have that guy play this role. And you'll never see him again. But to come in and do, a show or 2 shows or 3 shows, or whatever, it's amazing to watch them intersplice these actors.
Part of the love of this show for me is the nuance, as Ange said, but also the detail to every scene. It's one of these shows where there is so much going on behind the people they're speaking. There is so much care into the little things in the bar, in the street, the mud in the street, the mud on the shoes. There is so much of that going on. The number of extras is just insane. And this was a good episode for that because you had the whole cavalry that was at Little Bighorn is there and they're parading through the streets. It's wild. And there's things going on this street corner, on that street corner, at that bar, at that little hotel. There's just, it's crazy detailed. I could watch it almost without the sound just to see what's going on all around. It's really amazing. We're kind of getting a little bit away from the actual episode, but I think the show is so much larger than one episode.
Yeah.
Always was. This episode is it's a season ender. It's the end of I'm assuming it was already granted to have a second season.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what was amazing too is episode 12 was one day. It was one complete day. And so much goes on.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really, like when you just think about the show and just Bullock's character, if I have one word, it's a powder keg. That whole town is just ready to blow up at any moment.
Yeah. Right.
You give somebody the wrong look, you say the wrong thing, and it's just going to end.
And you've got this smaller thing going on within the town, right? These little battles and relationships going on. And then there's this bigger picture about South Dakota becoming possibly part of the Union and become not just being a territory anymore. And then you've got the whole, Native American and cavalry and taking land. And there's like some bigger picture stuff historically going on. And then you've got these little nuances. Name the character. They've all got their own little story that is fascinating.
The episode 12 wraps up the whole relationship between Bullock and Alma Garrett, where Timothy Oliphant and Molly Parker do a tremendous job of will they or won't they, and what's going to happen next. And he's heard White Knight, but not really a White Knight because it's Deadwood and there's no white knights there. But
it's all gray.
He's a gray knight. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the interplay between Powers Booth as Cy Tolliver, who's trying to run the town, and Al Swearingen, Ian McShane's character, who is running the town, where they're trying to, one step each other as to who's going to come out on top. And then the behind the scenes stuff where the Reverend has a brain tumor and he's going to die. And the doc was like, Al, you got to do something about this. Like he goes to Al, he doesn't go to Cy because Al runs the town. And something happens down Chinatown where the new miners, whatever, he kills one of the Chinese laundry guys. And then Wu doesn't go to Cy, he goes to Al because Al runs the town. And we got to come up with this. And it's just amazing to watch the interplay where one guy thinks he's about to run everything and you see that the other guy actually is. And Al's group of guys with that Dan Doherty character, W. Earl Brown, he's really good. He's just really good. It's like the put upon, like, what's the next thing? Okay. You got a message from my boss. Okay, I'll deliver the message from my boss. What's the next thing to happen? I mean, it's just really, really well done. I think the last thing with Al is when he's got the magistrate in there who's kind of blackmailing him, and he's got some, do you have that paperwork on you right now? And the guy's just so dumb that he's like, oh, I'm above everybody. I absolutely do. Okay, well, I'm just going to have to kill you now. And then later on, when Bullock comes into the room, he says, you got a blood stain there. And he says, yes, we're attending to that. Like, yeah, it happens. It's Deadwood. There's blood stains.
The humor of it came from that wonderful writing. And geez, Ian McShane is just perfect at delivering those
fantastic.
lines. And his face and those lines and those crevices in his face are just so perfect for the character he's playing.
Well, and his one guy's telling him, well, we better take care of this. There's going to be trouble down the road. And he's like, I'm not worried about trouble down the road. I'm worried about trouble on the road. Like,
yes,
we're not down. We're right there. We got to worry about this right now. And it's just so well done.
You got Powers Booth, who's running this one hotel gambling establishment. And brothel. Then you got Al and brothel, and you got Al
brothel.
Brothel. That was great. That's a great line.
Jeffrey Jones.
Again, yes. It's those little things that are really funny, right? This is a pretty meaty cast.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And this is one of the first ones that I can recall watching where it was almost like the BBC. It's 6 episodes, it's 8 episodes, it's 10 episodes, it's season, we're done, where they did 12 and that was it. And you watched it and you were like, only 12? Where's the rest of it? But the commitment that the actors have to make isn't as great because they're only going to do 12. All in, I think they did 12 each year. I think they did 36 episodes. So
right,
that's it.
I can do 12. We can shoot this in 3 months or something, and then we're done. And I can go back to being a big time actor, doing whatever it is I do. Where Ian McShane's, he's in John Wick. He's not messing around anymore.
Was this before or after Justified?
Oh, it was before. Yeah, Justified was after.
So this is Timothy Oliphant's like real big first stepping stone?
He's been around. I think he was around a little bit.
Before that? I mean, but not...
He made some movies.
Probably his...
Oh, yeah. This is his first big one.
This is his first big star turn, I think.
Yeah,
this gets him Justified.
Where he's driving the show. Yeah, I think this is it.
So him, you got Ian McShane, Molly Parker, who... I don't recall what she was doing before this, but she is just, that
so
East
good.
Coast woman who just takes over scenes. She's the opposite of whatever you're seeing on the screen in general. You've got this crazy town with all the bad going on in every scene, and she's this kind of warm light with East Coast mentality, East Coast vibe to her.
And a little bit of a drug problem, but it's another story.
Who doesn't like Loudnum? Everybody likes Loudnum, right?
William Sanderson. Love that guy.
You got Brad Dourif as the doctor. He's a great character actor. I mean, he looks like the doctor in this. He's got the hair. He's got the clothes. He's put upon.
Wow, he was in what? He was in
he's so good.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right?
He's so good. He's just so good. And I can't remember the name of the actress that plays Joni.
Kim Dickens.
In this particular episode, the spotlight's on her and not on Trixie. and she's really, really good in it. I mean, she looks like the high class kind of establishment that Cy's running, as opposed to the lower brow place that.
And then she's telling the horrifying story about her father basically sold her into prostitution.
Sold her into prostitution.
Yeah.
And she comes over and delivers the teeth. Here, I picked these up for you. Maybe your father can get something done with this.
I also like that. You know, I wish if it was my dad, I would have let him kick the crap out of him.
Yeah. I wish somebody beat my dad down. Yeah. But it was really, really good.
Hey, speaking of really good, this whiskey's pretty damn good.
It is. I've gone back to it a few times in this process.
Speaking of whiskey, did you notice almost every time that the Bullock character goes into Swearingen's place, it goes into the gem, they give him a shot. He must be doing like 12 shots a day in there. He just comes in. Every time he talks to Dan Dirty. You could not have this show as a college drinking game. You would be absolutely plastered.
So I wonder what the whiskeys were of Deadwood at the time.
Bourbon, rye. I mean, what else is it going to be there?
But where was it coming from?
It wouldn't surprise me if it was more like a vodka, that it was White Lightning. Because that'd be the easiest thing to make out of a still, right?
Hey, Swearingen's character, was he supposed to be English?
Yes.
He has like no English accent whatsoever in the whole thing.
Is Ian McShane English? He is.
He
English,
is.
Right?
I think he's supposed to be a classy kind of guy who's come to
right.
Deadwood and the class is gone.
You mentioned Peter Coyote earlier, and this is the only episode he's in, right, as I recall?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I believe so.
But as soon as I hear his voice, it is impossible for me not to think about Ken Burns documentaries. Before I watched this, Ken Burns' baseball doc was playing endlessly on Major League Baseball Network, and I come into it every once in a while, and it's him talking about Babe Ruth, him talking about Satchel Paige, him talking about Bobby Thompson's home run, and it's, oh my God, it's just that he's got a great voice for documentaries. He's like Liev Schreiber. They're just these voices that just kind of resonate and just tell a story, and you kind of just get sucked into the television. So we didn't guessly get into the whole episode exactly, but I think we were pro series, definitely. Deadwood was just our kind of show.
There's so much that happened in the whole thing, you know, and even like, what's his partner? What's Bullock's partner?
Saul
Star.
The one Jew in the whole show, which kind of connects back to Milk and Honey.
Right. He sort of sets conscience to a degree.
Yes. He's a moral center to the show. One of the few moral centers to the show.
He just wants to sell some hardware. That's all.
Yes.
That's all.
I just want to sell a shovel to a guy who's going to use it and cut off a Native American's head.
It's got to be good for business, right?
That's right.
Don't do anything that is good for business.
Any last thoughts on the whiskey, by the way?
You know, for 56.2%, it's pretty easy drinking.
What's the price point?
Is it the $95 range?
I think it was 110-ish. I think.
Okay.
100-ish.
I think for that price, I think it's a pretty good buy.
Yeah, if you're using the $10 per year.
Oh no, you can't. You just can't.
Well, you can, because this is not really a 3-year-old.
But
whiskey,
yeah.
right?
When you look at the Angel Share, this is like a 10-year-old whiskey.
FYI, I mean, I drank a good bit of that sample. It goes down pretty good.
So cheers to the folks at Milk and Honey. This is a fun experiment, and it'll be fun to see what else they come out of different parts of Israel, and especially out of the Dead Sea. It's just really fun. We liked it.
It's not in the Dead Sea.
Near the Dead Sea.
It's within spitting distance of the Red Sea.
Dead Sea adjacent.
Dead Sea adjacent.
Dead Sea City. Dead Seaville.
If you lived near the Dead Sea, near this hotel, and they said, hey, we're going to, right across the way, we're going to have 12 barrels of whiskey or 30 barrels of whiskey aging there. Would you NIMBY them? Would you say, not in my backyard, buddy? Or would you say, yes, please?
I will sleep with them. I will sleep near them. I will guard them.
Or would you say to the hotel, are you hiring? Because I would like to clean your roof.
Can I dust the barrels?
I'll keep the buzzards. We did buzzards in Israel. I'll keep the buzzards away. All righty, guys. This was a good one. One show, one drink. We highly recommend the Apex series, Milk and Honey, Dead Sea, Single Malt. And we highly recommend going back to HBO and watching Deadwood.
Yeah.
Yes,
correct?
we do. Yes, we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shall I take us out?
Take us out of here.
Play us off.
So if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Where else are we at? Lots of places.
Boozedancing.com.
Boozedancing.com. And you could find us there. And again, questions, comments, suggestions of any sort. Well, not any sort, but within reason. Email us at boozdancing@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Gentlemen.
Huzzah!
Huzzah! Huzzah!
And one last thought. Don't forget, we all have bloody thoughts.
Well said.
I didn't say it. General Crook did.
General Cook did. That's right.
General Crook. All right, boys. Cheers.
Cheers all.